Welcome to Inform TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota. Today, this 6th day of February 2014, we're going to be listening in on a USDA forestry conference call, and it relates to improve forest health and some restoration of some land. And I was able to get a question in that relates to some of the things here we're doing in Minnesota. If we would just shift some acreage around, or not acreage around, but shift some of these $500+ million per year our Minnesota farmers get for crop insurance subsidies. In fact, the last 3 years, our Minnesota farmers have received about $514 million per year over the last 3 years to insure about 17 to 18 million acres, right in there. And I presented a question after you listen to this conference, if we would transfer the equivalent of the last 3 years, what we could do with forestry renovation and restoration here in the state of Minnesota. The numbers will blow you away. And in this news conference, as far as the Minnesota side is concerned, they list Upper Mississippi headwater restoration. And obviously those of us that fish and hunt in the state of Minnesota, Bleach Lake, Winnebagosh was flooded to have the capabilities to get some of those logs down all the way down to Minneapolis, St. Paul for the sawmills in the early days. And have you ever been to Grand Rapids, that type of thing, and be in that area of the olden days when Minnesota, probably even before we became a state, for sure in our early statehoods in the late 1850s and so on. So when you listen to this, I want you to listen close to the dollar amounts they're talking and what the Forest Service in relationship to USDA is trying to do. And then we look at some of the mind-boggling dollars we're giving our incredibly successful farmers. And if you would just take the next 3 years, use that for forest reforestation of some quality either pine or hardwood forests in Minnesota. Listen what we could do. Enjoy this. I had to step away, but it's good listening. So listen and be informed. You're watching Inform TV, Alexandria, Minnesota.
Thank you, Susan, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We've got an exciting partnership that we're announcing today. Forest restoration is a top priority both for the U.S. Forest Service and for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Our fire seasons are 60 to 80 days longer than they used to be over the last 2 or 3 decades. We're seeing more areas burn. We're seeing more areas, more watersheds subject to fire and other risks. And so we need to do more to increase the pace and scale of restoration, not only on our national forests, but on our private working lands as well. And so today, I'm pleased to announce a new partnership between the U.S. Forest Service and the Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS. We call it the Chiefs Landscape Restoration Partnership. The goal of this partnership is to improve the health and resiliency of forest ecosystems where public and private lands meet. And we're going to do this through partnerships between the two agencies, as well as partnerships with a lot of local partners, states and local communities, forest industry, conservation groups, and others. Our vision is to restore lands across a large landscape regardless of ownership, to reduce wildfire threats to communities and landowners, to protect water quality and water supply, and to improve habitat for at-risk species. To accomplish this, the Forest Service and NRCS are launching a coordinated effort in 13 priority watersheds to deliver on-the-ground restoration. NRCS is going to use funds from the Farm Bill to work with private working landowners to restore forests through thinning, through habitat improvement, brush removal, watershed restoration, and other activities. And the Forest Service is going to use its resources on the adjacent National Forest System lands. We found that when we work both on public land and private land, that we can both improve the health of watersheds and also reduce the impacts of catastrophic wildfire. So today, the partnership we're announcing has 13 priority watersheds. We've chosen these based on existing local partnerships and work already in progress. Together, the two agencies are going to invest about $30 million across these 13 watersheds. These watersheds are across the country. We've got 2 watersheds in California. We're in Oregon, Montana, New Mexico, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Arkansas, Mississippi, Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New Hampshire. And our hope is that this won't be a single-year effort. We're going to do this over multiple years. We're going to work with additional partners elsewhere to look for additional places where, again, we can work to restore forests both on public lands and then adjacent private lands as well. Forest policy has been an area of quite a lot of controversy over the years, but I think this type of effort demonstrates that collaboration is key. If we're going to solve these issues, we're going to need to work together amongst our partners, not only across agencies, as USDA is doing, but with states, with local communities, with forest industry, with environmental groups and others. The challenges we face, particularly in the West, where wildfire is a critical issue, are challenges that have built up over years due to suppressing every fire. We're seeing impacts from climate change. And so we need to take a long-term view here. These projects are going to be critically important to addressing issues in these watersheds. We're going to add additional projects, but we're going to see benefits, we think, over the coming years in a way that will allow us to address catastrophic wildfire, improve watershed health, improve wildlife habitat, and do it in a way that's collaborative and has broad support amongst our stakeholders. So with that, let me just add one other thing. Later today, I'm headed to the Helena National Forest near Helena, Montana. Going to meet Governor Bullock there. The state is investing in forest restoration in that watershed, as is the city of Helena. Forest Service has areas where they're working on forest restoration, and NRCS as well is going to be using its resources to restore forests on the private lands there. And again, this is a watershed in Helena that's important not only for that city's water, but for the potential issues related to wildland fire. And so we think we can accomplish multiple goals here: reduce fire hazard, improve the watershed there for that city's drinking water, and to do it in a collaborative way with the state, with the governor, and with the city of Helena. So with that, Susan, let me open it up to any questions that we may have online.
Thank you. And once again, we invite reporters, if you want to ask a question, please press the *1 on your touch-tone pad. And as we await for reporters to jump on the line, put it into perspective of how significant it is really to improve the forest health, especially in the wildfire area, to reduce the risk of that, because I know that several years ago there was a very serious fire that...
After the tone, please state your name.
Alan Repke, Inform TV.
Thank you.
Can reduce the severity of those wildfires. We have a lot of places like San Bernardino and in the city of Helena that I mentioned earlier, where we have lots of people and lots of houses in what we call the wildland urban interface. And that's areas that are forested, but we have development. And we know that if we do work in those areas, that we can reduce the nature, potentially we can reduce the number of fires, but even when we have fires, those fires are going to be easier to fight. They're going to be less catastrophic. And so But we also know that if the only thing we did was work on our national forest, that wouldn't be good enough to address this problem, that we need to work on our private working lands as well, that our forest landowners are interested in doing this, and that Forest Service and NRCS working together can help get that work done.
Let's go to our callers on the line, the Associated Press's Matt Volz. Matt.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to ask if the 13 projects you've identified, are they fully funded to their completion, and what's the timeline for their completion?
So as I said, we're investing $30 million this year. I think our expectation is that there are going to be about the same amount of dollars. You know, it's hard to say exactly because of appropriations, and Congress at the end of the day is going to appropriate money certainly for the Forest Service as well as NRCS. Our expectation is we'll be at about $30 million going forward on this. We've just gotten a farm bill that locks in some certainty related to NRCS dollars, and we think it's reasonable based on the Forest Service budget to expect that we can create the level of or maintain the level of investment here. With respect to specific projects, each project's going to be a little bit different. There are different needs in different areas. Some may take longer than others. What we do know is that we have lots of acres to treat and lots of work to do, and that there's a broad need for this. So if you take, for example, the watershed we're going to visit today in Helena, the 10-mile watershed, that's an area where we're going to be focusing in one area as part of this project to start out, the Red Mountain Flume and the Chessman Reservoir. But as this project moves forward, we'll look for additional areas where we can do this work, both on the private side with NRCS and with the Forest Service on the National Forest. And we expect that the other projects may have similar areas where we can, there may be additional acres we can involve over time.
Let's continue with our reporters that are on the phone line from Arkansas Radio Network. Gary DiGiuseppe. Gary?
Thank you, Undersecretary. Could you detail for me the Western Arkansas Restoration Project that's on the list?
Sure. Just so everybody knows, I believe there will be a link with descriptions of each of the 13 projects that I think you all can access. The Arkansas project is called the Western Arkansas Woodland Restoration Project. And this is an area where there'll be benefits both for on the fire side, but we think watersheds as well. There are issues related to invasive species and reintroducing more natural fire system to reduce fire hazard and help wildlife habitat. So the project aims to double the conservation activity on private lands in the project area over the next 3 years. On the National Forest there, it's the Sylamore Ranger District of the Ozark and St. Francis National Forest that'll be involved. There are wildlife species like Indiana bat and others that we think will benefit from this. We're also going to be doing work on roads and trails to improve those and to reduce sedimentation, to improve water quality in the watershed there. So again, this is a project that has multiple benefits. There are issues related to fire, but on this one, the issues related to water quality and reduced sedimentation are very important as well.
Thank you. Let's continue with our reporters on the phone line. And once again, if you'd like to ask a question, please let us know by pressing *1. Let's go to Alan Repke with Inform TV. Alan.
Yes, I checked with the local NRCS people here as far as the cost of reforestation with quality timber here in Minnesota, and he said they could mechanically, including the trees, probably seed an acre for $700 an acre. And so if USDA in Minnesota's case just took the $1.5 billion that we've given Minnesota farmers in subsidies for crop insurance the last 3 years, we could reforest 2.2 million acres here in Minnesota with high quality timber. Any talk of doing something progressive like that, of diverting some money? Our farmers, crop farmers, are doing extremely well, but in Minnesota we used to be the land of white pines, the greatest pine quality in the world. Any thoughts that way?
Well, no. So we have a new farm bill that Congress has just passed, and that lays out our policies related to crop insurance as well as our conservation programs. So the spending on those programs is set. We don't have the ability to move dollars from crop insurance to conservation programs. That's Congress's job to do. But what we're doing here is using the flexibility that we have in the Farm Bill to target our resources to important natural resource issues, which of course forest restoration is one. You talked about the costs of reforestation, maybe places as part of these projects where we do some reforestation, but we're also doing a lot of work related to restoration activities. So again, as I mentioned, hazardous fuel removal, thinning, issues related to roads and trails and sedimentation and watershed improvements. So we're looking at a suite of activities here in partnerships with a lot of stakeholders that we think will produce significant benefits.
Thank you.
We've got time for one last call from Climate Wire, Tiffany Stecker. Tiffany.
Thanks for taking my call. I'm wondering if this is at all related or part of the Forest Service Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program, the CFLRP, and whether, or first part, yes or no. Second part, I know that that program has been successful on the pilot level. Forest Service has been wanting to take it on kind of a U.S.-wide level, and wondering if this announcement today is part of maybe the Forest Service trying to expand on that program. Sorry if this is maybe something you don't know about.
It's an excellent question. It's a great question, and the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program is a very important program. The administration has fully funded it every year. We have 23 projects across the country where we're working with forest industry, environmental groups, local communities, other stakeholders to do large landscape scale restoration of the type we're talking about today. You asked the question, is this part of that program? No, it's not. It's not directly part of that program, but what I would tell you is this effort today, as well as CFLRP, are part of a broader effort that the Forest Service is undertaking, and obviously with the partnership today, in partnership with NRCS, but it's part of a broader effort to increase the pace and scale of restoration on the national forests, to do so in a way that reduces wildland fire hazard, improves watershed, and to do it across lands, so both our federal lands and private lands. So this project is an extension of that vision and of that priority for all of us. And as I said in my opening, it's critical that we do this across both our federal land base and our private working lands. I should also say here that there's a real connection to the President's Climate Action Plan. So in the plan, the President recognizes the importance of land management issues as we look to address climate change. The nation's forests sequester about 14% of the greenhouse gases that we emit every year. So our forests, those emissions that go up, our forests are pulling them back down. But in order to maintain that, we've got to keep our forests healthy. And so particularly in places in the West where you're seeing significant losses of forest, both to catastrophic wildfire, where climate change is a significant contributor, but also to our bark beetle infestation. We have 40 million acres across the West that have been, more than 40 million acres that have been impacted by the bark beetle. And there's a climate connection there as well. And so, restoration is going to be critical. As I mentioned before, forest policy hasn't always been without conflict. And so these types of collaborative approaches where we're working together, we bring stakeholders to the table, where we can reduce our litigation risk, are going to be critical to our efforts moving forward.
Also, if you'd like to get the full details of the projects, all you have to do is go to USDA.gov and then click on the link that says the latest news, and you'll be able to see the press release there. And inside of that press release is a link where you can get that detailed information. And we're going to bring this call to a close. I want to thank Undersecretary for Natural Resources and the Environment, Robert Bonney, and for all who were on the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Well, as you can see, I had a busy morning. I had to run on, take care of a couple things at the door, that type of thing. I'm not sure if anybody listens when I listen to these conference calls, but I think it's a great way to see that you're truly informed. I know there's nothing flashy. It's like looking at the radio, and I'm not the most pleasant looking person to look at for whatever reason. Next time I get a haircut, I got to get rid of my cottontail back there. No matter what I do, I'm starting to get a cottontail head here. You're going to call me Bugs yet. And but what I want you to understand, and I'm thankful they have taken my question there. When you see when government makes no transfers, when we argued about that farm bill for how many months, or actually over 2 years, and we continue to give massive amounts of money to our crop farmers in Minnesota, raise corn, soybeans, sugar beets, wheat, whatever. And but if you, as my question pointed out, if you would just shift that $514 million per year that Minnesota farmers have received on average over the last 3 years, you're talking $1.542 billion. Just think of that. That's gifts to the richest and most successful. My dad farmed for 40 years, never had crop insurance. I farmed for 30, and the reality is a little bit of hail insurance, and all I ever should have taken was, in those days, the policy for $25. I could have got 50% coverage on 6,000 acres for $25 a year. Now they've changed. It'll probably cost the guys maybe a few thousand to do that, and where we pay all their premium related to catastrophic loss, but most of them are taking this revenue insurance now, and we're going to have some additional info on that. But just think of that. When I called the Douglas County Farm Service Agency and talked to the natural resource guy, and the conference call was coming up, and I had things happening all over here as a one-man show, and he was kind enough to, or the lady was kind enough to, in the NCRS office there, NRCS office, but we're by McDonald's North there, to take my call, and he said, if you use DNR trees that you can get, and he said $700 an acre. If you start putting big tracks, and I mentioned, what about 40? Oh, if you got a big tract like 40 acres, I know you get it done for $700 an acre. And that was my thought too. In fact, I was using even 500. But just think of it, people. If you take $1,542 million, and divide it by $700 an acre, you're talking a total of 2.2 million acres of reforestation of high quality trees for future generations. We talked about this beetle, and we switched over from elm trees here to ash trees, and what happened? See, the whole thing of each generation has an obligation to look forward for the coming generations. And when it comes to high quality timber, that's why Paul Bunyan, as they say, came to Minnesota, the best of the best here. And unfortunately, our predecessors let forest fires and no management, no replanting and that type of thing. And maybe there's probably hybrid white pines now that I know some are dealing on, or pine trees or hardwood trees, that type of thing. And that's what I brought up. And see, the old Farm Bill did the same old, same old. He was talking about reforestation and things we should be doing, but he was talking $30 million. Minnesota alone, our farmers were getting $514 million a year. Guys that have balance sheets that would blow you away. We talked the Stamers here are likely getting over $2 million a year. The three boys, Leroy and Jill Stamer, and it's all right. John Croman at Care 11, I wrote to him. I sent this, the Star Tribune, I saw the Fargo Forum. You don't hear boo. Why? Because they're all media sources. They're not press organizations. They're not reporters. They're about money and power. And I just want you, when you start watching now, come spring, but most of them are in the fall because they ordered their soybeans and seed corn last fall to get tax discounts for the last year. But when you see these corn and soybeans and chemical ads on Twin City TV or Fargo TV, what they're doing, one simple thing, it's power insurance. To see that the network affiliates don't upset the apple cart that they've got going here. Where see these farmers today, they can't even plant the soybeans that's a self-pollinated plant on their own ground. They can't just pay a tech fee. They're paying. Guys are telling you their soybean costs now are from $40 to $60 an acre because they not only can control the genetics, they control how the seed is even distributed. And the farmer is paying these what I call whorehouse prices for soybeans and corn today. And seed corn, obviously, you can't replant it, but soybeans they surely can. And so there's so many ways of addressing issues of the day. And at Informed TV here, in my little broken English and ugly face, I'm just trying to get you to get some insights. So you start throwing some darts on the wall and start connecting things here. We just got example after example. People were common people, and even people of wealth and substance are just looking the other way or say, well, you can't change it. Yes, we can. In fact, we have an obligation when we say we're Christian, and when we put on every dollar it says, in God we trust. In the Bible, Christ through the traders, the merchants out of the temple. And the reality in a capitalistic democracy, from time to time, we have to throw these traders, this marketplace, out of the temple of justice and balance in our government. Thanks for listening to Informed TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota. You're watching Informed TV, Alexandria, Minnesota.